Welcome to the Furlough Capital Real Estate Podcast, where we dive into the intricacies of love. I'm kidding. We dive into the intricacies of passive real estate investing. And our mission is to equip people to invest wisely, to love their investments, both properties and residents, and so that together we can build wealth while improving housing and...
Lost your train of thought there.
I was trying to figure out if I could stick in one more love joke in there, but I was like, this isn't going to sound good, so I wasn't going to do it.
Yep.
Anyways, I'm James, and this is my lovely bride, Jessie.
I had a different intro in my head, but I have to say, I'm kind of glad we don't do like a love podcast or relationship.
Welcome to the Love Show with James and Jessie
Right?
Furlough. These two
brings me back to, like,
lovebirds love real estate. Oh, Delilah.
Yeah,
dude.
like give us
I used
your
to
request.
work at Arby's, and that was every night, dude. Delilah would
That's
come
what was
on.
playing.
And yeah.
All right.
I used to try to guess what her like sometimes like people would call with a question and she'd give advice. Not like Dr. Laura, but like and
Yeah. No,
But I
they
would,
call
like-
with a request, and she's like, "What are you
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
tonight?" You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh man, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Delilah. Oh man. That was it.
Wow.
Oh, amazing.
That is not where I was going, but okay.
Okay, that's right. But we went there. And the reason for all of this is because Valentine's Day is coming up. Woo!
Happy
Oh man.
Valentine's Day.
Hope you got good plans. Yeah, hope you got good plans.
Yeah.
We don't have any yet, but that's okay. We will figure it out. And
It's also okay if you don't.
yes. So what I want to talk about is love and money. Specifically, what I want to talk about is investing as a couple with somebody. That's something that's been known to happen. And oftentimes what has happened in my experience is you get one person, usually the dude in the relationship, who they suddenly discover real estate and they go down the real estate hole and they're like, this is amazing. And then they come to their wife or girlfriend, whoever, and they're like, we're going to invest in real estate. It's going to be the most amazing thing ever. I learned all these numbers. We can make so much money doing it. It's going to be amazing. You're like, okay, slow down.
Yeah.
And then what they do is, oh, and by the way, I found this perfect property for us. You got to check it out. And it's just like,
Too fast.
oh,
Too
man,
much.
it's not
Yeah.
good. And and they very quickly get to like, oh, I don't know about this. Or the significant other's like, all right, like let's proceed, but they have some questions about it. They're maybe not really on board, and it could just cause troubles.
Creates tension.
Yeah, it can create tension for sure. And that's because sometimes like risk tolerances are different.
Yep.
Mine is a lot higher than yours.
Yes.
For example, there's so many things I would love to invest in, and you're just like,
Nope.
no, like, come on. And sometimes too, there can be issues with like just time commitments, especially in the real estate world, right? Where it's like, hey, now that we've bought this place, so A, we can't afford to go traveling anymore. And B, instead of us going off to the beach to have fun, we got to finish regrouting the shower, stuff like that. And, and that can cause some strain.
especially if you're considering DIY types of investments or projects. Like,
Yeah.
you got to talk
But
about that.
there's obviously positives because you got two in the trenches, not just one. And you can support each other, both in terms of like you have strengths, I have strengths. And there are definitely bonding moments that happen. Like I remember how excited you got when you got your first Sawzall. You're like, this is amazing.
So amazing.
And then we were underneath the house chopping
favorite
stuff
power
up.
tool.
It was so good. Yeah,
good.
I just think those are good. And in general, it's good to one of the things that I liked about it is you and I were like, it felt like we were moving in the same direction. We had some shared goals. Because often like you have a separate job, and that's totally cool, but there's not a lot of overlap there.
Right.
And honestly, it's like, okay, you got like 5 more minutes to tell me about your day, and then we're done.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Which is typically the norm, I think, for most couples.
yeah, but the cool part about investing together is like, oh, now we have this thing that we can talk
It's a
about.
shared
And obviously, you got to be
project.
careful about it not always devolving into that. There's other stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
If you're in love, but yeah. So, anyways, what I want to talk about is how to do it successfully. Because I think if you can do it, it can be an awesome experience and not horrible. Yeah. So, first thing you got to do, you got to sit down and you got to decide why you're doing it. I think that's important. And it's a boring first step, but I think you got to be on the same page. Are we investing for retirement? We're not touching any of this for 40 years or more. Are we just trying to get a little bit of extra money so that we can go on vacation a couple more times a year?
Yeah.
Are we doing this because I want to retire early?
Right.
Or
are we creating investments for our children, leaving a legacy, or
no? But yeah, I'm on the vacation side of things. No, I'm kidding.
Other couples might have different.
Yeah, which is fine, and you want to be on board with that.
Yeah.
I think that's important because that will also dictate the level of craziness and involvement that you get with that. And then I think this is super important. I actually think a lot of these things are just important when you're buying a house just in general, but you want to align on what I would call the non-negotiables. Okay. You want to figure out what's important to me and then what's important to you, right? So for example, you want to align on the strategy. Are we flipping houses? Are we doing long-term rentals? Are we investing in syndications passively? You want to figure out what are we doing and do the research together, figure out what the pros and cons are of each. Don't just try to hey, this is what we're doing now. Also you want to talk about the budget. I think that's important. How much house are we going to actually spend here? What percentage of our budget are we going to go up to? Which now that I think about it, we had a couple come over and I knew that was one of the questions and we never got to it. The answer is 25 to 35% for when they listen.
Your income?
Of your income, that's how much you should spend on your housing. Your PITI.
On primary housing, not on investments.
Lender's going to help you figure that out.
Yeah.
So don't worry about it. Again, I think it's also you got to talk about your risk tolerance. And I know I talked about that can be a mismatch, but you got to figure that out. The best way to figure out your risk tolerance is to play what if scenarios. Okay. So, because someone's going to be oh, I'm higher risk than you. Right. Well, okay, great. What does that mean? It's still kind of super fuzzy. Right. So so you can play what if. So would you be willing? Would you rather? I guess would be the way to do this. Okay, let's see if I can do this off the top of my head. I didn't think this through enough. I'm curious on your answer. Would you rather have $50,000 invested with a guaranteed return of, say, 12%? Or would you rather have $10,000 invested? And so let's make some real numbers here, not just do percentages. $50,000 with a guaranteed return of $5,000. Okay. Or would you rather have $10,000 invested with a 50-50 chance that you either make $10,000 or you lose it all?
The first one.
Interesting. Okay. And
because I'm going to make less, but it's guaranteed.
Yeah. Or what would, let me think if I can make this make more sense. Okay. 50-50 chance, $10,000, 50-50 chance of making $15,000 or losing it all.
I think I'd still rather do the first one.
Okay. So technically from a probability standpoint, they're exactly the same. So from an expected outcome standpoint, but they speak to your different risk profiles, right? One person's no, I get it. I will probably make less and I'm okay with that. I don't want the risk. Whereas the other one's man, I only got to put 10,000 down. And I think I can manage it and, do whatever it's going to do to work out well.
Yeah.
So
I think there's another layer there too. Risk tolerance is definitely involved, but and I don't know if this is on your list somewhere, but it's the complication of the deal. It's as it gets more complicated, I get less and less interested because I can't keep it all in my head and I can't wrap my head around it. Yeah. And so it's this doesn't feel comfortable anymore.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of these things, that's worth scenario planning out. Honestly, and the best way to do it would be to analyze some deals, to run through it, say, we're not buying this. I don't care how amazing it is. We're not doing it.
We're just looking at it, evaluating it.
To run through and to do a variety of different types. Because you'll find out okay, if I'm going for a 10-unit place right out the gate, there's different type of financing, different, all sorts of stuff. And you quickly may go, oh, this is awesome. Or no, I don't think so.
Honestly, that was when we very first started investing. I remember just looking at a bunch of deals and it was we weren't necessarily going to get them, but it
I
got
them
us.
All, but that's okay.
Of course you did. Yeah, of course you did. But your perspective was I can make any deal work. We can make this work. And I was just no.
Yeah.
So, but by looking at a variety of different places, actually seeing them in person, looking at spreadsheets, just evaluating a bunch, we were able to get to that equilibrium of
Yeah.
like, okay, we're not getting the craziest, like there's a big hole in the backyard that looks like a swimming pool,
Man, I
but
wanted
wasn't.
that one. I wanted
Like,
that one.
wow, that was bad.
It was pretty bad.
And we didn't go to that extreme, but we also didn't go the other extreme to where it was like there's zero risk at all. It's a super nice
Right.
property. We're gonna make
got to rent it out.
yeah, but we're not gonna make that much. You know, it's not
Mhm,
really
mhm.
worth the investment. You know, if
But
you
yeah,
consider
but
it.
so
But we found that equilibrium that
totally.
we were both comfortable with.
I think like analyzing deals as scenarios.
Yeah.
And just like quickly looking at them. Oh,
Yeah.
cool. And you could just start out with like going on Zillow. Oh, what about this one? Can we make this work? And you quickly narrow it in. And the same thing, you want to agree on property type.
Yeah.
And I think you'll have a natural inclination on which direction you want to go for that. But it's
Yeah.
good to talk about. Location. I think that's a big deal to get on board, right? I mean, like for us, right? We Corvallis. Would you move to Albany? Would you move to Sweet Home? Would you move to Newport?
Mm.
You know, Salem, Eugene. Like,
Well, but you're not. If
would
you're
you
talking about
invest in them, right? And I mean, it depends on, would you invest in them, right? And I think like it's two things. If you're doing it actively and you know you're going to manage it yourself,
Mhm.
like, am I willing to drive that far? But then also passively, right? Like for me, I've decided Oregon is my boundary.
Mhm.
I'm sure that there are amazing deals in Washington, in Idaho, in Florida,
Mhm.
but I just don't care. That's too far. I don't know those markets well enough, and I'm not willing to put in the time and energy right now
Mhm.
to learn about those markets. And so I'm just like, it's a no.
Well, and that totally makes sense to me. If the deals caused you to have to consider moving, yes, you would want to talk to your significant
Yeah.
other about what the implications are.
Or again, like I think about like our Sweet Home property. I guess an hour one way.
Yeah, that's
You know,
true.
that's a big deal.
There's bigger asks on your time
Yeah.
if it's something
Like,
that's further
sometimes-
away.
Kids are out of school, man. Guess what, guys? We're going to A&W.
That's right.
That's what we did today, actually.
Yeah.
I think another one is your return on investment expectations.
Yeah.
Right. And this was a big one for you, right? You're like, it has to be profitable, has to be cash flow positive the first year.
Yeah.
Like that was one of your non-negotiables, which I was like, oh my gosh, that's quite okay. All right, here we go.
Mhm.
And I just think that's important to figure out what those are, because otherwise you're gonna be looking at deals and you're gonna be like me, go, this is amazing, we should get it. And you're gonna go, no, it's not. And you just want to be able to articulate why
Yeah.
one's good, one's not.
Mhm.
I think it's important. So I think like once you kind of figure those things out, the other thing you want to do when you're actually like, okay, we're really looking, is I think you want to evaluate them independently. Okay. I think that's something that could be super helpful, because the problem that people run into, couples run into, is you get someone like me. I look at a deal. I'm looking through all the Zillow stuff, and I'm reading about the market, and I'm going through all the information, and I'm throwing it into my own little spreadsheet, and I'm running all the numbers, and I'm getting excited about it, right? And then what I do is I go to you and I go, hey, guess what? I found this awesome deal. It's so good. It's going to sell for, we can buy it for this. We can rent it for this. I think in 5 years we'll be able to sell it for this, and we only got to put this much money into it. It's a great deal. We should get it. What do you think? Right? And it was like this thing that I took half an hour to process visually, looking through, taking in all the information. I verbally vomit upon you and then say, give me an answer.
Right.
And it just doesn't work. It's not fair to you. You instantly go, no, I'm not into it. And so what I found that works better is when I find something that's interesting, I run all the numbers and then I send the listing to you. And I don't know if you notice I do this now, but like I'll just text it to you, like, hey man, what are your initial thoughts on this?
Yeah, you let me evaluate first.
And I'll let you take it in at whatever your pace is, and then we'll talk about it. And usually when we start to talk about it, I then go, let's go over to my computer, let's pull it up, let's flip through the pictures together. And we both I will then say out loud, trying to map the house out through the pictures. Oh, it looks like they got this. Oh, this is a tree. And I will think out loud so you can hear the processing that I'm doing. And then, because you don't do the spreadsheet thing, I'll go, all right, let me open up my spreadsheet and I'll walk you through like painstaking. Here's all the assumptions. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's the thoughts, so that it takes a half hour for you to get there. And I usually find that by then you're able to make like a good, like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense, or it doesn't. And sometimes half the time I talk myself out of it by that point, because I'm like, I actually missed this the first time around, stuff like that.
Which I think is valuable I guess one of the things that this points to is if you take time to look through it separately, but then come together and evaluate together and go through and take your time, oftentimes it clarifies what type of deal it actually is.
Yeah.
And things will come up, for the property or against it, to actually fully evaluate and say, oh, this actually is a great deal and here's why, and we can prove it, and we can look at the numbers and we can tweak things and turn the knobs to make it work. Or you see something that you're like, oh, wow, yeah, I missed that in my initial evaluation. How come I didn't see that? Or why was,
Yeah, totally.
Things come up. So you shouldn't just go on a gut reaction from either person.
Yeah,
when you're evaluating a deal.
And same thing if you're doing, like, even if you're investing passively, I think it's good to say, hey, think about investing this, read through this.
Yeah.
And even if the other person's like,
think through it.
Okay, if like, I trust you, go, I know you do.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and read through it. At the very least, now we can, when I'm talking about this thing, you're aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
Like when we're passively invested, we are passively invested in a deal. And I know initially, like, we went through it all and we talked about it. I don't send you the email updates, mostly because they're useless, but otherwise I would. But yeah, I think if they were useful, I'd be like, hey, this is worth checking and seeing. Here's the progress that's going on. Mostly because I want to show you how brilliant I was for bringing you this deal. But I have on here in my notes that I think you want to use that shared framework, right? Which comes back to the ROI. Like, yeah, these are the numbers that we care about. Here's what we're looking at. You are putting it up against the goals. Yes, we have the same goal for this property and for overall, even for risk assessment, right? You want to talk about those things and just your concerns. I think it's important to say, like, all right, like, area of grievances, let's go. Like, it's okay. If we're talking about a lot of money here, what are the concerns? And for sometimes the concern for the significant other might be like, this all just seems really risky. And you go, okay, like, if you were to say that to me, I'm like, okay, you got to be more specific. Tell me about it. And oftentimes it's, all right, we got to dial this back. Let's talk about it. I know when we were first starting doing down the creative path, you were a little bit like, now what is it you're doing here? And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And I found other resources, not my voice. I was like, hey, watch this video. This walks you through it really, really well. What is it? And I remember there was one specific video, we watched it and you suddenly went, okay, I get this now. Yeah. And that's like, sweet. So about this deal. And you're like, yep, I understand. Let's go.
Now I understand the application of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I think, and perhaps this is the same in most relationships, like you were saying earlier, there's one person who's like all gung-ho, they're all into real estate, they're super excited, they did all the research, and
they discovered bigger pockets.
And that other person is just, they're behind in the education level of things, and so it's like it takes a little bit more time to get them up to speed, and so there's like,
I'm just remembering, I think when we met in college, I was full steam ahead on this, and you were like, "You're nuts." And I was like, "So you should read Rich Dad Poor Dad and then let's talk." And and I was like, "That's the start of the education."
Like one of our very first conversations. We were very first dating.
Yeah,
it was kind of talking about like, what do you want to do in life, and where do you want to head? And you said something, like, I want to invest in real estate. That's what I want to do full time. And I was like, "You're nuts."
Yeah,
like, why in the world would you want to do that? I was like, you just get a good steady job, and
I did both. I listened.
Right. Which, it totally, after time, made sense to me. But you had to give me that basis of education that you already had.
Yeah.
An understanding of how the system worked and how to evaluate properties and what to be looking for. And
by the way, if you're in the area, maybe we could figure out how to do this over Zoom, but we have a board game. It's called Cash Flow. It's where you it takes all this investing and it says, hey, it speeds up the entire process to essentially go through a lifetime of investing. You fill out cash flow statements. It's amazing.
It's actually really fun. I mean, you pitch it that way and you're like, oh, you have to fill out the statements. It's so nerdy, which it kind of is. But if you're someone who wants to know more about what real estate investing looks like, just in like the bare bones of how does this actually look for my income in and out each month, and what how do I wrap my head around a deal? Like,
Yeah.
what does that even mean?
This board game is shockingly efficient
Yeah.
at painting that entire big picture.
Right. And it gives you a variety of different types of deals, different types of scenarios, different types of markets that you would be like, oh, okay. So if the market did this, then I would adjust this way. And then the thing I love about it is you can play the game with actual numbers and with your numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to tweak it a little bit, but you can use the same strategies to apply to real life scenarios.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so you can then, that's helpful to me as I'm
So,
like, I need
this
concrete
podcast
examples.
is not sponsored by Kiyosaki, but if
It's
you
not,
want to, I
but
would let you.
It's really good.
But my offer is, if you want to play, dude, let's set up a time.
Yeah, let's
play.
play.
I love to play it. I can play it every single night and be totally happy. So
That is kind of true. He asks a lot of the time.
there's a digital version. There used to be a digital version. I would play it all the time. It was good.
It's pretty funny.
So back to like going through the process. I think another thing that you can do, which I think is really important, is to role play different scenarios, or at least play out. Maybe not role play is not the right word.
Yeah. Just play out.
But what
Evaluate
happens
them.
if a tenant doesn't pay rent? What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
And just like, what does this look like? What's the risk? What's the problem? What are those moves? Or, hey, water heater breaks, unexpected repair, the tree falls on a roof. What happens next?
Yeah.
And I think that also just helps get you on the same page in terms of, what's the plan? Are you going to be comprehensive? No. But that's okay. Like, that's not the point. The point is to try to think through some of those processes. And I think it's good. And then ultimately, you got to do yes, I'm in. No, I'm out. And I think each of you have to do this. Or hey, if we modify the deal, we offer less or whatever, better terms. And I think you go, if we met this criteria, yes, I'd be in. Like I remember our very first place when we looked at it, initially, we were like, no, it's $30,000 too much. And our agent was like, what are you doing to me? But and so we were like, no, we're good. Like it's too expensive. We're out. And then 6 months later, they lowered the price by $30,000. And we went, sweet, we're in. We then offered them $30,000 less than that. And they were like, you must be joking. Come back up 15. And I went, perfect. And so I feel good about that. But that was how that worked. We were like, ultimately it's a no until this thing gets modified.
Yeah.
And then once it was modified, it totally made sense for us. And so I think that's important. And then here's my favorite part. This is my suggestion for every single couple. You got to do a mini celebration.
Yay.
Yeah.
I love that part.
That's so important, right?
That is fun.
I even think it's important if you both come to a no conclusion to do some sort of like, hey, let's celebrate the fact that we worked through this process, we looked at it, we fully evaluated it, and we smartly said no to a bad deal for us.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're celebrating. And for us, mini celebrations, the kids, it usually defaults to going out to eat. But we've done other stuff like what have we done? We've done like spa days because I love that kind of stuff. Yep. We did one. This wasn't a small one, but it was like we went to Disney World it wasn't super mini, but it was a celebration. We've done
smaller trips and
but like what's something that you can do? And we usually focus on experiences, not just buying stuff. But like what can you do to just kind of to commemorate, to make that a moment to go yes, and to reward yourself in the moment for doing what you're supposed to be doing instead of having the reward be later on, which makes it hard for behaviors to take all that fun jazz of behavioral stuff. But that's our recommendation. Mini celebrations, plus, someone you love. So go for it.
Date night.
Why not? Exactly. So those are my tips. Again, I think if I were to summarize it all, the idea is if you fall in love with a deal, don't just go and tell them verbally about it. Let them walk through the process with you. Let them evaluate it. Let them see it visually. Go through it slowly. Decide on the criteria. And then you can decide on it ahead of time and modify it as you go partway through. You go, man, there's none of these deals based on this criteria. Let's rethink this. I think that's important.
Yeah.
And heck, I was listening to this podcast today where this guy was talking about, it's like, if you want to make a deal profitable in a year, like, dude, you got to be really strict criteria. He's like, but not me. I only care about deals that are profitable in 20 years. He goes, I can buy pretty much anything. It's like, yeah, you can.
Yep.
I was like, I want the year, but I'm willing to put in the work for it. And we're on board with that.
Yeah.
That was something we did from day one. And so I think I just think like that's how you can do it in a successful way.
Yeah.
And you got to know like, yeah, like there'll be times when you miss out going to the beach or doing something fun because, man, a tenant called and something broke, or all of a sudden you got a turnover and, man, you're there at 2 a.m. painting. Done that.
If that's the way you set it up.
Yeah, I guess you could hire a property manager. Or again, if you're investing passively, you can go, yep, we're doing this deal together. We get it. We've evaluated the risk.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would boil it down to like most relationship advice. It's like,
respect and communicate.
yeah, talk to the other person and come to an agreement. You know, it is not going to be successful if one or the other just plows ahead and is like, hey, I tried to get you on board, but you weren't there. That's like, you know, it's not going to be great for your relationship.
Yeah.
So like as painful as that is, and I know there have been times where you're like, oh my gosh, this is such a good deal. It's a ton of risk, but it's a great reward. And I know you've said no to certain deals because I'm like, I just can't get there. You know, whether it's like, I can't wrap my head around it or it's too risky or whatever it is. And we communicate. I know that you respect me and I know that you're willing to make adjustments and find a different deal.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, okay, both of us are willing to communicate that through and talk about it.
I agree.
So it's hard.
Cool.
But it's worth it. And good.
Yeah. I think it's good. It's been good. It's been good for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
been-
So awesome. So happy Valentine's Day. Hope you have a fantastic time with that. And I hope that this was helpful, inspiring for you to take a crack at investing with your significant other. It truly is a lot of fun. It's also a lot of work, but it's truly
You might
a lot
get a
of fun.
salsa out of the deal.
Oh man, could be awesome. So with that, we would love it if you invested with us. And so you can check us out at furlough.com. You can see all about us, how we invest, see our track record, all that awesome stuff. And if you like this, we'd love it if you left a comment. And with that, thanks for listening. Have a great day.